Hello. Good afternoon or good evening, depending on what time it is for you. We hope you're well and safe in your homes. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Fatima and I am a marketing manager at AppViewX. Our topic for today's webinar is Simplify ADC Automation for F5. This webinar will be presented by Murali Palanisamy, who is the Chief Solutions Officer at AppViewX. Just a little housekeeping before we begin. If you have any questions, please type them into the Q&A panel below the presentation screen. I'll bring them up during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation, and Murali will help with the answers. So let's dive right into the webinar. Over to you, Murali.
All right, thanks, Fatima. Hello, everyone. Hope you're all staying safe, working from home. Now, today we're going to look at how we can simplify ADC automation and primarily focus on F5, F5 Big IP and Nginx. So, as part of the agenda, we'll look at what makes the ADC complex, or the F5 deployments and infrastructure complex, right? Layer 4 to 7. And that complexity, right, is becoming a big challenge to efficiently manage that. Now, look at how we can standardize it, how we can simplify this whole process, and how we can manage it effectively. Right? And then we'll focus on the benefits of automation and what we'll look at customer use cases. And depending on the time, we can take a quick demo and then plan for some Q&A, depending on how it goes. All right. So, what makes the infrastructure complex? Why is it so complicated? Right. Typically, configuring an F5, there are so many different ways that you can set up. Right. Usually, it's a manual process. Traditionally, it's been a manual process. Some of the folks have automated it quite a bit, but then it remains manual at large. And there are different ways to configure a web, right? And there are a million ways to do that. So depending on which engineer does it and which side he woke up, he could take approach A or B for the same result. Now, with all the virtualization and containerization and whatnot, right, there is a huge sprawl in the number of devices that we manage, number of virtuals, number of instances that we manage. So that also adds a level of complexity. And then there is also siloed, disconnected process where there is a high-level definition on how we want to set up or how the naming conventions has to be, how the deployments has to be, how the monitoring has to be. But to a large extent, right, in enterprises, it's a little bit segregated, disconnected in a way. And the lack of standardization flows through all of this, where whether it is setting up a device in a cookie-cutter way, there are solutions for that, but then there are setting up a wide IP or a WIP or a different load balancing setups for specific use cases, right? Again, folks do struggle with it. AS3 sort of helps you in certain ways in helping to standardize that, but still it is a challenge today, right? Now, the consequence of this is that there is some level of scripting that is being done to address these capabilities. Some of the self-service capabilities, monitoring capabilities, enable, disable, extended ECB monitoring, things like that. And then you need technical expertise, right? In a sense, you need a pool of engineers who's pretty good in understanding layer 4 to 7 and having them for you to run a successful environment, you need a set of engineers who are really good at it, and all of them doing some of the basic tasks, right? Meaning, it's typical to have an architect who understands everything, or rather a senior engineer, and then delegate some of those simplified work to more level 1 ops. In this particular case, even the level 1 ops has to be upskilled to handle such a thing, and that adds additional complexity. And once you gain knowledge, and once you're in a senior engineer role or an architect role, you don't want to do L1 ops night and day, right? So it becomes a little tricky handling that, or you have to fill that with consultants or outsourcing and a whole bunch of other use cases. But that also adds a different level of complexity. And then there is operational silos, where there is application operations team, infrastructure operations team, network operations team, where who takes what, who takes what level of ownership, hand-holding, troubleshooting across different organizations. That also becomes an additional challenge. And visibility. Typically, when there are multiple teams supporting, managing, and requiring the technical understanding and all that, each one is going to look at things differently, and not having a central view or a central way of looking at things can be challenging as well. Right? I mean, human errors. This is a huge issue. I'm sure everybody would have been bit with this. I'll give you a very simple example. Let's say the company has invested in a HSM. They've used F5, a network HSM, and they use F5 to talk to the HSM, to secure the keys and whatnot. And they've created a web, everything, right? Application and all those things. Now, a simple human error where if they didn't pass the argument for F5 to generate the key on network HSM, it will default to the file system, and all the investment that was done to build that HSM farm would not be utilized, and it will be out of compliance and all that. And once that is set up and configured, and say goes live, nobody would see the difference, right? Everything would work and all that. But then from a compliance and audit perspective, it would fail, right? And to mitigate that, it becomes a huge long-term process where you have to revoke that certificate, reissue that, because the keys on the file system are to rekey, which means that you need to get a new certificate, a whole bunch of things. Such a small error could have a huge repercussion. And like that, there are a whole bunch of examples that we have seen, customers run into. Right now, the complexities with we have seen because of the security requirements, audit requirements, compliance needs, PCI, and all that, right? There is a lot of investment being put in let's say setting up a HSM or having a high assurance certificate, CA, and re-encrypting and all that. Now, all this complexity sort of adds to the challenge, right, on the efficiency. What it means is, from a business perspective, the complexity is cost. Right. Now, how do you can throw bodies at it and then say, try to solve the problem, which means that there is more engineers working long hours and there is, or it has some service delays because of these mitigations and things like that, or because if it's a manual process, it takes delayed, there is a maker, checker, reviewer, and all that, so there's some delay there. And then it can also lead to application outages and potentially have a high total cost of ownership. Right? Now, the ADC deployments in a typical environment, right? The app owner requests a certificate, means request an application config, right? Typically, it's done. I mean, if it's like an AS3 type with some automated tools, Terraform and whatnot, right? They have some standard offering that they can use that and replicate it and whatnot, right? But typical environment, right? It's not applicable for all. For a more mature DevOps organization, it works. But even there needs to be somebody who has who sets it up, configures it, and helps them to consume it. Right? Now, in a typical environment, the way it's done is they submit a request, and then there's a change management ticket in ITSM, and then the network operator team looks at it, takes that, and then configures the DNS and defines the configurations or reserves the IP in the DNS, or even hands it over to a DNS team, and then the configuration is sent to a maker-checker type of an approval process, and then that gets deployed either manually or automatically, or whatnot, depending on how they do. So this typical cycle takes days or weeks even. The business is looking for more speed and agility and all that, right? Adapting to DevOps and agile methodology so that they can get time to value quickly. Now, how can we compress this, and how can we enable a faster time to value with this, right? And that is where AppViewX comes in, right? What AppViewX does is it basically simplifies the whole management capability, and it automates the whole process. It actually orchestrates it across multiple systems, thereby reducing the complexity and enabling a better adherence to policy and simplifying the whole process. And lets the engineer focus on more of the designing instead of handling the day-to-day mundane tasks, right? And all those day-to-day tasks, it empowers the app ops team and those individual teams to do it themselves, self-serve themselves. So this adds to a huge value, right? And if you look at the way it is done, it's an easy way to simplify and standardize the whole deployment process. It's a GUI-based, centralized inventory across diverse environment, whether it is Nginx or F5, F5 GTM, LTM, ASM, AFM, whatnot, right? So you have a central location, you can see all those devices. And then straight out of the box, there is some of the standard use cases that we have seen over a period of time with all the major financials, retailers, healthcares, and energy, and all those different customers that we have. So what we did is we took all of their use cases, and then we found what is the most common denominator, right? And then we identified that, and then we put all those basic requirements that they want to do, right? This traditionally creating, modifying, and deleting the web. It's very easy to say, create web, right? But then there are a million ways of creating a web. There are a million capabilities in creating a web, right? How do you enable users to use those, but at the same time keep it a little bit standardized or simplified, right? And that is what we have done, right? And then, okay, you created a web. Let's say you want to update it or modify it, right? Whether it is with AS3 or whatnot, right? It's not easy to basically view what is there, right? Like the status, and then and use that to modify. Modifying it could be even like as simple as disabling a particular pool or a node or whatnot, right? And also upgrading an F5 or firmware and whatnot, and then DNS resource records, like it could be a GTM record, it could be an LTM record, a whole bunch of things that you could do there. So all of those out of the box, pretty straightforward. integrated with ServiceNow if you're using that as a service catalog, or AppViewX itself has a service catalog. You can use that. So it can be, and there's an API, out-of-the-box integration with Terraform, Jenkins, all of those DevOps capabilities as well. So in essence, the end user can consume it either through a UI or through a service catalog from the likes of ServiceNow and whatnot. James, you can self-service themselves either through AppViewX UI or AppViewX service catalog, or ServiceNow UI and then ServiceNow service catalog and other service catalogs. Or you can use the API to request the same thing. Or you can use Terraform or Ansible or Jenkins to do exactly the same thing. Now, irrespective of how he requested, it all lands into the same bucket. Now, there are different ways that you can implement it on a device. If you want it implemented as an AS3 and you want the source to be secured on a Git, a central Git, AppViewX does that, so that you have a source control of what the config is, even if it's a UI, right? If you're using a self-service UI and you're creating a creative web with all these parameters, it will convert it into an AS3 and then it will update it in the Git. It's your version control it and all that. So that irrespective of how it flows, it's handled the same way. And it integrates with, as I spoke about orchestration, right? So let's look at what are the things that are involved in creating a web, right? Could be a change ticket, could be an IPAM IP reservation, could be DNS, all of those, right? So sort of gives a zero-touch orchestration across the board. Now, the visual workflow, this is what is another interesting capability, which is a lot better than other automation offerings that you have, especially in this use case. Now, let's say we have a create web. Now, we have given a standard way of creating a web. That's not how you use it, or that's not how you want it. You can go edit it visually, just put additional approvals or make a checker, whatever you want, email notifications, all those things. All this you can do it yourself, right? And that is the power where you can define it and make it adapt to your requirements. Now, you can give this capability for specific persona, meaning the service catalog capability. You could assign it to specific personas to allow them to do specific stuff. For example, if you want the security teams only to control the whitelisting, backlisting, or even the policy, right? You can do that. Or if you want the operations team only to self-serve and sort of take servers or services in and out of service, or if you want to do a DR enable, disable, or even a blue-green deployment or a canary-based, percentage-based traffic across multi-site. All of those capabilities are there. You can just give access only to that. Right? And then the RBAC-based access control enables a pretty powerful granular capability to allow folks only to do what you want them to do, right? Like routing traffic across your applications, for the ops team and things like that. You also get an app-centric topology. What it means is, let's say you pull up an application, app1.com, right? Then it basically shows you all the different capabilities, right? You can go look at all the way from the top, from the DNS to LTM to the servers, and you can see the connections, and you can see all the status and whatnot, right? And then it gives the real-time monitoring and remediation capabilities and all that. And you can actually do an object-level backup restore, right? You can look at the drift management for a particular application, see how it is and whatnot, right? Very simple way of looking at it from your perspective, your application perspective. Okay, so let's look at the same deployment, how it works on the AppViewX ADC Plus. Now, you have the different personas, they can log in and then they just say, okay, I want this done. AppViewX will go create an ITSM ticket. It'll basically generate the configuration and it'll give you whether it is AS3 type or a TM shell type, depending on how you want it. It'll give you a way to review it. The review can be done over email, or you can log in and then see what is there. It has some pre-validation, post-validation capabilities there, and then it'll go deploy, implement it. You can have dual roles, like a design and deploy as two different roles. It'll go implement that, validate it, and send you a notification that I've done this and the status of this is like that. So this whole thing can be completed within a few minutes, right? So what you're seeing our customers do is what used to take like weeks or 2 weeks or so, they've been able to do this in like 10, 15 minutes end to end, right? And this with the least human error. Now, I've just taken a very simple use case. This could be as complex as something with a HSM and dual site with a blue-green deployment for a particular application, or a canary deployment on a multi-site, multi-cloud application. So a whole bunch of complex applications which are pretty well simplified and streamlined with this, with AppViewX Flow. So how does this help? Now, the biggest benefit is you get an end-to-end automation and fully simplified, automated cookie-cutter design with source control, with any whatever source tool that you use, right? All within 2 minutes, you can set this up or use the whole thing end to end, right, for however complex the application is. Now, because of the capability that is offered, right, it basically enables you to reduce your total cost of ownership of running the application and thereby consuming more F5 devices. You can have more siloed deployments and still manage it a lot better. One of our customers, they had 5 engineers managing around I think 100 or so F5s. Now, after they deployed AppViewX, the same 5 engineers are there, but then the number of devices has increased 3 times. I think now they have around 300 and something devices, and it's the same 5 engineers doing the job. So they've been able to scale themselves to manage a lot more complexity, a lot more deployment, right, and focus more on the architecture than worrying about the operation side of things, right. Gives you better compliance. You can define a standard. It starts from the VIP naming standard, pool naming standard to configuration standard, and everything can be audited with a click of a button to see if all that is implemented properly, and all that, and pretty much reduce all the application outages due to manual process, right. It's a cookie cutter approach. Gives you a very streamlined capability to simplify this. And performance and availability, right? Because you have this canary-based model, blue-green model, sort of reduces your application failures, and then also enables you to quickly failover. It has capabilities where it can even you can configure it to quickly enable a splash page in case your application goes down. Large enterprises, large financials are using that to basically manage this, especially when there is a DDoS and you want to set up a honeypot, or even if there is an issue where you want to take the application out and then put a splash page for a short time, you're able to do that. So pretty extensive capability. And all the, I think pretty much all the large F5 consumers are our customers, right? And we've been proven, tried and tested in highly critical, mission critical applications. I think one in three U.S. household uses or passes through our system, which is managed by AppViewX, right? So it's a pretty extensive solution, and there are thousands of engineers who use it. I think one of the enterprises, there are 7,000 users who log into AppViewX during the DR simulation. So they use this to trigger their application DR when they do a periodic HA simulation in their application. So pretty well proven at scale, right? And then we are containerized. We run on it's a VM that we run on, but then underlying there is a Kubernetes engine, and then it auto scales based on the need. So it's a pretty it's a cloud native application under the hoods, right? It's a next generation approach. So this is a customer use case. It's a real data what they have experienced with our product, and they deployed AppViewX. When they deployed, pretty much all of the process they used to do was manual, and once they deployed, I think they were able to get initially it was configuration automation and self-servicing is what they were trying to do, and then they matured into pretty much full automation end-to-end, and they saved substantial amount of money. The way we calculated that is they had outsourced this to a third party, and they charged per transaction or per change and whatnot. Over the period, so we calculated the amount that they would have paid if this was not implemented. And in AppViewX, they made such a huge number of changes in there. I think in the next slide, it will talk about those changes. So what AppViewX does is, if you are to use other tools, right, it basically takes you to a certain level with AppViewX orchestration. It sort of gets you all the way to 90-95% automation. So this is the service request split up on what they did, right? They had, I think, there were quite a bit of server rotation requests. There was quite a bit of VIP creation, wide IP creation requests in there, and then a little bit of other requests, DNS requests and whatnot. But then some self-service capabilities as well. I think 17% was self-service, and they used ServiceNow as the front end for that. So pretty, if you look at the amount of changes that they did through the platform, it was pretty humongous, and it was all automated end-to-end. Now this sort of summarizes what we do, right? So in this particular case, you can consume it, and the left-hand side is how you consume AppViewX, right? It could be either using AppViewX UI, GUI, or REST API, or Ansible. We have an Ansible module for AppViewX. We have Puppet. We have Terraform Provider, which is available for AppViewX, and for every use case, you have a sample that you can just give it to the Terraform team. They can use that. And there's Jenkins plugin, and then the OpenStack integration, ServiceNow plugin, which basically you can consume. Now, on the right-hand side, we integrate with this to orchestrate across these multiple systems, whether it is HSMs. I think some of them are missing. For example, Fortanix, we support Fortanix. We just did a webinar yesterday with Fortanix on how we integrate, and that was for a financial out of Europe, where we automate the whole process, where all the way from the key creation of Fortanix to setting it up on F5 to communicate to it and all that. We do the same thing for Gemalto, Zephyr as well, but then the idea is that we orchestrate through the different vendors. And then again, talk to firewalls to create the rules, enable the ports, and talk to all the CAs to get the certificates and deploy it on F5 or Nginx. And then talk to change management systems to create a ticket and close that after it is completed. So we are actually growing the right-hand side of those integrations and the left-hand side of how you consume it as well. And the plugin based containerized architecture enables that to do it a lot better and quickly as well. All right, so I guess we can skip the demo. If you have if you want more information, please do go to try.AppViewX, and you can sign up for a demo where we can give you a more personalized, detailed walkthrough of the product, or you can also sign up for a free trial where you can set it up on your environment. The key aspect is it's like an easy, you don't have to know coding, you don't have to know CLI. So if you were to set up Ansible, right, it's not easy. You cannot do it on your own, right? You need to read up a few things, and then it sort of is involved. And you can also not give access to other teams like other ops teams and all that to say this is how you can consume, right? It's not a straightforward thing. So with AppViewX, it makes it a lot more simple, straightforward, and you don't need to know coding. You don't need to know Python or anything like that. All of that is already provided out of the box in the product. We can help you set it up, or you can set it up on your own, and then you can consume it. Right? So yeah, then if you feel free to reach out if you want more information, and do sign up at try.appvx.com. With that, we'll look at any questions that you have. Fatima, do you?
Yes, Murali. We have two questions as of now. So the first one is this a SaaS solution?
Yeah, so it is an on-prem, cloud-hosted, cloud-native solution. If you are looking for a SaaS offering, because it is cloud-native containerized, we do offer SaaS. We have had a couple of customers use it as SaaS. So depending on what your requirements are, let's talk, and then we can tell you how we offer SaaS. There is a mid-server needed, which would basically communicate to your system internally if you want to manage the on-prem devices from SaaS. And since it is containerized, you can run it in AWS Kubernetes or GCP Marketplace. You can spin up and run it as a cloud hosted, which runs on your cloud, or you can run it on-prem in your environment as well.
All right. The second question, do you support vendors other than F5?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, right, in the integrations, there are quite a bit of integrations. So we are an orchestration system. So we support ServiceNow, we support Remedy, Jira from an ITSM perspective. We support all the major CA vendors that you might have heard. And we also support routers and switches in terms of ACL setup and whatnot. We support Infoblocks, Bind and BlueCat and whatnot from a DNS perspective. So it's a pretty extensible support.
Could you elaborate further and perhaps demonstrate the application-centric bird's eye view feature?
Okay, that's a good point. Let me see if I can pull that up. So there are two bird's eye view feature that we have, right? One is one we call the topology view, where it sort of gives you a view of the URL and the multiple locations that you would have. So let me try to pull that up. And there is another one called AppVision, which basically integrates all the different capabilities from different different like firewalls and all that, like as an infrastructure view. It's a logical infrastructure view. So there are two ways that you can see the bird's eye view. And let me try to pull this. So and in that view, I think to share, I have to right now. It's a little interesting just to set up sharing. I think you can continue with the questions, Fatima, while I pull up the
Yes.
document.
Okay, Murali. So the person who had asked you about the vendors which we can support other than F5, they have repeated their question and they've asked, I meant ADC vendors.
Okay, ADC vendors. So right now we are focusing on F5 and Nginx. We feel that a majority of our customers use F5, and then with the Nginx acquisition, we see that there's an opportunity there where there is no central management for F5 and Nginx, and obviously they have the largest market share, so we are focusing on that. So we do support AVI, but again, as I mentioned, our focus right now is primarily on F5 and Nginx from a deployment perspective. And I think 95 or even 90, maybe 97% of our customers are using F5 and Nginx as the key capability. Okay, so let me try and see if I can pull up. Any other questions, Fatima?
No, Murali, that's all.
Okay, I'm trying to find the right topology view. Wasn't prepared for it since you asked the question. I'm just going through that. I was going to walk through the workflow, visual workflow capability and all that. Yeah, so this is a simple example. Hope you can see this. Now it is not showing the status here. So this will show you the status and whatnot. So let me go back here. So you can basically search for any keywords, and then it will show you all the VIPs that are there. So let's say I search for IP or okay, so let me pull this up. This has like 1,000 pool members. We just created this for our testing and whatnot. But then it gives you an idea as to how it shows up. It's going to take time because it has 1,000 pool numbers. Let me try to find something better. Yeah, we can give you a pretty good canned view of it. Yes, it will give you a better picture. So this capability has been like widely used by a lot of our customers because it sort of gives you one holistic view of all the different setups, right? Okay, this is all too big. So oops, just refreshed it. It's all performance view. this. I'm not sure if it will give you the right one. Okay. So yeah, the idea is it will show you the status and everything, and you can basically right click and then you can view the config and whatnot. So irrespective of which data center it is and whatnot, you'll be able to see the status. I don't have an environment ready to show you right now, but yeah, we can set up a call. I can walk you through how it is and how it's set up. All right. Any other questions?
No, Murali.
Okay.
We are good.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you found the session insightful. We hope to see you all again at our next webinars, the date and agenda of which will be shared in an email in a couple of days. Thank you and have a good day. Take care.